We've seen symmetric encryption. Now let's take a look at asymmetric encryption. It's also called public key cryptography. We'll see why in just a moment. You get two keys, a pair of them. They're mathematically related. The public key that you encrypt with and the private key that you decrypt with. Now the thing about it is the public key, like the name says, anyone can have a copy. The private key, only you have the copy, and we'll talk more about that in just a second. Asymmetric encryption is computationally expensive. It's very slow to encrypt large amounts of data, so it's not really suited for encrypting like whole documents, whole files. So what we do is we compromise. We use both symmetric and asymmetric. We'll use symmetric to encrypt the actual data, but then we'll protect the symmetric key with asymmetric. We'll encrypt the symmetric key with the asymmetric public key. Are you confused yet? Well, stay with me. Asymmetric encryption provides both confidentiality and integrity, and we'll see how in a little bit. You request or you create your own public-private key pair. So you can go to VeriSign, GoDaddy, and depending upon what it's going to be used for, they'll charge you different amounts of money. I'm not convinced that there's any real difference in the capability of the keys, but whatever. If you're going to use it for an e-commerce website, they're going to charge you more like $1,000, and they're going to really investigate you to make sure you're not just some fly-by-night little organization. If you're just going to use it for personal use, just for your own little messages, they'll charge you like $10. If you want, you can just use free tools and create your own, but that comes with its own set of problems, and we'll get to that in a little bit. The idea, though, is that you freely give away your public key. That's why it's called public. You give it to anyone, but you carefully guard the private key. You never let anyone else have it. And we'll see how it all goes in just a sec. So here's an asymmetric key pair, and this is actually the real deal here. I mean, they don't have to be exactly this, but you can see the relationship. The two keys, like I said, are mathematically related. Now, Wikipedia actually has a good article on this. Even if you're not very mathematical, and I'm not terribly mathematical, you can still kind of get it when you read the way they talk about it. Anyway, we'll generate two keys. They are mathematically related, okay? We keep the private key. No one's supposed to be able to see this. It is stored in a non-pageable part of kernel memory in your computer or your device, and it stays encrypted by itself. The public key, we freely give it away. You can even read it, and it's given away in certificates. We will encrypt with the public key, and we will decrypt with the private key. So we'll encrypt with this, decrypt with that. By the same token, you could digitally sign with your private key. You're the only possessor of your private key, so everyone assumes that, hey, it came from you. But since you give away the public key, anybody can use the public key to verify the signature. So two ways we can do this. Here's what it looks like. You have some original file, whatever it is. You have the two keys that are mathematically related. You use the public key to do the encryption, but then you use the private key to do the decryption. Now, this means that if somebody wants to send you something, they don't use their key, they got to use your key. If Bob wants to send Alice something that only Alice can read, Bob needs Alice's public key, not his key. He needs Alice's public key to do the encryption. She gets the encrypted file. She has her own private key to do the decryption. So this means we've got to be able to exchange keys, and we'll get to that in just a sec. We have several asymmetric algorithms that we work with. The granddaddy of them all, the one that is the de facto standard on the internet, is something called RSA. It's named after these three guys at MIT. I think their names Ron Rivest, Adi Shamir, and Leonard Adelman. You can look it up. Anyway, it's based on kind of a heavy mathematical formula. It's based on the practical difficulty of factoring the product, in other words, multiplying two large prime numbers, what we call factors, really large prime numbers. It's called the factoring problem. Then we have Diffie-Hellman, and this is named after what? Whit Diffie and Robert Hellman, I think. This is used specifically for exchanging those public keys. We have different groups. Diffie-Hellman can be broken down into what are called groups to determine the strength of the key in the key exchange. You don't have to worry about that so much, but you'll have like Diffie-Hellman group 1 or group 2. We just have to use the same group type. And then there's something called ECC, Elliptic Curve Cryptography. It's based on the algebraic structure of elliptic curves over finite fields. Huh? You'll see a picture in just a sec. We can achieve the same level of security with ECC while providing a shorter key, so it's computationally a lot easier. So in other words, an ECC with a 256-bit key has the same security strength as RSA, or Diffie-Hellman for that matter, of 3072. So it's good for devices that have low computing power, like smart cards and mobile devices. Here are some examples of the algorithms for asymmetric encryption. You can see RSA is kind of a complex mathematical problem here for generating the keys, then for encrypting and decrypting. Diffie-Hellman is for exchanging keys and combining our traded keys to come up with a shared session key. And by the way, that's what we use. We use Diffie-Hellman almost all the time for trading keys. And I'm going to show you another diagram that gives you a concept of it. And then there's ECC, elliptic curve. You can see mathematically it's a lot simpler than this. It's the idea of drawing a curve, and then you draw a straight line through it, and the intersection of the curve at these 2 points, that's how we generate related keys. To understand Diffie-Hellman, which is something we use all the time, because remember, Alice and Bob, they need to trade keys so they can send secret messages to each other. Remember how I said, if Bob wants to send Alice something that only Alice can read, Bob's got to have her public key, the one she gives away. He then uses it to encrypt the message, and she uses her private key to decrypt. And then vice versa. Alice wants to send Bob something only he can read. Bob's got to give her his public key. She encrypts, sends it to him, he uses his private key. Now with Diffie-Hellman, you can use Diffie-Hellman also to create a common session key between the two parties. Here's an example using colors of paint to try to get the point across. So Alice and Bob, they both have some common algorithm, okay? A common algorithm. They each have a secret key, the secret color. If you combine this common algorithm with this secret key, you're going to get this color for Alice. She's going to get like this orange color. Bob, however, combining the algorithm with the key, he's going to get sort of this weird bluish thing, okay? I don't know if this is exactly correct, but just go with me. Now, this orange thing is Alice's public key. This light blue is Bob's public key. They give each other copies. They trade them. And heck, anybody can intercept that if they want, because the secret is that nobody has the private key, all right? So anyway, we trade. Now, Alice has Bob's public key and her private key. When you mix them together, you get this icky brown color. But that's the common session key. Same thing with Bob. He takes Alice's public key, his private key, mix them together, you get the exact same icky brown. And that is the common secret, the session key. And it gets destroyed when the session is over. So that gives you the idea of the Diffie-Hellman key exchange, which we use all the time. Now, typically what we'll do is we'll generate RSA keys. That's where those secret colors come from RSA. But then we trade the public keys using the Diffie-Hellman mechanism. There are protocols that use asymmetric cryptography, PGP, and then which is pretty good privacy, and it was bought and was no longer free, but MIT kept the concept going, and they created an offshoot of that called GNU Privacy Guard, I think, GPG. Or the one you're familiar with all the time is SSL/TLS for when we are connecting to websites, or we have an SSL-based VPN. Or SMIME, Secure MIME for encrypted email attachments. Or SSH, if you SSH to get a command prompt from a Linux or a Cisco device. Or even IPsec, the VPN protocol, which we talk about a little bit later. And the Internet Key Exchange Protocol uses an asymmetric cryptography mechanism. It uses, quite frankly, Diffie-Hellman to trade keys in order to create an IPsec-based VPN. So that's our look at asymmetric cryptography. Now, let's keep going. Exchange Protocol uses an asymmetric cryptography mechanism. It uses, quite frankly, Diffie-Hellman to trade keys in order to create an IPsec-based VPN. So that's our look at asymmetric cryptography. Now, let's keep going.